groups gathering for fun and well-being are so popular, but what do we know about the work of those people who facilitate these groups? I'm Belinda Densley, a PhD candidate, and welcome to the second podcast in the series on the important work of facilitating singing groups. This is a role close to my heart because I've been facilitating singing groups for decades. In the last episode, we talked about step one in the process of group singing facilitation. Advocating for singing participation, community development, well-being, and the role itself of leading singing groups. Singing facilitators are always advocating. So what's step two? Well, it's adjacent to the role really. It's the logistics. Like any group work, there are tasks to locate a venue, recruit participants, manage communication, arrange insurance and licensing. In the interest of staying with the juicy parts of the role, let's place the logistics aside for now. After all, savvy facilitators, like many people who attain mastery in their field, devolve these responsibilities. They implement systems, use supports, or develop the additional skill sets required to manage them. In short, it's abundant non-singing based work that needs to be conducted in alignment with all the principles we advocated for in the last episode. So let's focus on the unique work of the singing facilitator. The next step is curating. Curating involves planning a singing session. It's like designing a banquet with multiple courses for guests with varying appetites and food sensitivities. The songs need to be selected or written, developed into group singing pieces, framed for the group, and shared. Notice this work all starts before the group starts singing. So curating begins with song selection. And how does that begin?
The core of it, of course, is the selection of material that is appropriate to the group. So, and for me, that's the most creative part of the work. And I see it as a work. I see it as a right livelihood for me, given gifts and abilities, which I did nothing to deserve or ask for, that I was born with and that have been developed. So to be my true self is to do this kind of work, facilitating the bringing of song to people and igniting that within the group. Yeah, so the core of it is to choose the material that fits the time and the place and the people. And so gathering the songs together. And of course, songs are little works of art. Every song is a little work of art. If it's been authentically made, it's going to reflect the authenticity of the person who wrote it. And I've always thought that if you can be true in the particular, then it will generalize. For me, it's always related to place. So that's the difference between being a singing leader in place and somebody who does something online or who records something and it just goes, you don't know where. So for me, the gathering of community, gathering of the people is incredibly important. So I often have my antennae out for what the community needs, or where is the hunger of the heart at that point in time, or what songs need to be dropped into this situation.
Where is the hunger? Where is the hunger of the heart, of the heart? We're chasing magic through the dark.
Every single different singing group that I lead has a different sense of place. And that totally dictates how I lead and what I do. Mainly, I think, in terms of actual repertoire. I think I'm most sensitive to the differences between people which result from the place that they're in terms of songs. So I would just, there are a few songs that I can take everywhere and I can use everywhere, and they're completely applicable and universal, sung enjoyably by anybody. There's a whole heap of songs that are only appropriate in particular places. So I go through my lists, when I'm planning a session, and I go, oh, that one feels right, that one feels right, that one doesn't. And that's based on a whole lot of some assumptions that I'm making about the participants and what will turn them on and what will turn them off.
When you're selecting that repertoire, you're calling it assumptions, but if we called it, you're listening to, what are you listening to form those assumptions? Can you comment on what are you listening to?
I think I'm listening to my own biases mostly, because if I'm meeting people who I don't know, no, that's not true. I am listening to them as soon as they arrive as well, because if I'm working with people I don't know, then I make a point of chatting with every single person before we start, unless it's like a massive workshop, so that there's been some interaction between me and them. So then I'm listening for their sense of how they themselves feel they fit into the situation. And I'm also listening to the space. And that's where place kind of actually is about place. You know, there'll be certain environments where stuff that might work in another environment won't work in this environment, or will work in this environment because we're outdoors, or we're in a room that's got a really nice feel, or we're in a room that's got a really shit feel, or the furniture's all over the place and it's too hard to move it around. So all those kind of things. So I'm kind of actually listening to the space itself, the physical space itself.
The selection criteria is vast. Facilitators take suggestions from singers in their groups, listen to one another, and listen to the world through song and through facilitator ears. We've heard how place impacts selection, but what else are facilitators drawing on to make their choices? Well, they're interested in how the song rattles their bones and rolls around in their bodies.
And so it's like it's just like a gospel style anthem that works well in bodies, that has movement, some moments coming together and some moments apart, so rhythmically interesting.
I would never choose a song and teach a song just because. I have to hear it or arrange it and have a really, is the word visceral response, that sort of literal bodily response to a song. If I don't get that, nothing else is enough. I've always had it, and I'm experienced enough now to know if I have that response, generally speaking, the members of my choir are going to respond, if not to the same extent, then in a similar kind of way.
You heard the word arrange then, which has a particular meaning in the world of music. Arranging a song involves setting out the sections. Where's the verse? Where's the chorus? How many times are we going to repeat each section? And how will the tune sound? The main tune of a song is called the melody, and it consists of notes. When any two or more different notes are sung together at one time, that's called a chord. As facilitators, we aim to plan chords that sound good rather than those that clash. And there are musical algorithms to calculate that. Or your ear can also recognise good from bad. So using a variety of musical theoretical or ear-based techniques, group facilitators plan where the chords or harmonies will go. They also leave sections for free play because many singers can arrive at these harmonies naturally. Arranging is part of the curating process that I'm calling developing the song. And like so many processes in life, the singing facilitation process isn't necessarily linear. Some parts of the process can be bidirectional. So, for example, a facilitator might select a song and then develop it, or the development of a song can work out so beautifully, the song makes selection.
At the moment, we're doing one of the arrangements I learnt from Stephen at Wintersong is Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? Not my favourite song, and it's actually quite boring, but Stephen's harmonies are delicious. So we're doing it so that women can just explore and enjoy the delicious close harmonies in it. Because I don't arrange that way. It's not my skill. It's not. So I'm willing to look at a song for a different perspective, and they're really enjoying the notes. There's a lot of joy to be found in the music itself.
Song selection is really important, and it puts action to the advocacy we discussed in episode 1. The selection of material is heavily influenced by the values facilitators espouse about singing, community, and well-being.
This is where the work starts to land, in the community. And so you're taking the joys and the sorrows as your raw material, because if it's all happy-clappy and you're not ever connecting with the lament, then it's kind of just up here and it doesn't ground, it doesn't land. So when I'm bringing, my program together, I'll always start with the joyful and the celebratory and the fun stuff, or it can be just plain fun. But I always try and include connection to the natural world, to beauty, to the breadth, to the cosmos. And then I'll have a couple of songs that will name the struggle, or we have a moment of stillness or quietness, or we just get gentle and we resonate, and it might be, like the walking song, oh, hey, oh, and then there can be a poem within there. We're just naming some of the other side of life. Jewish writer who came out of the Holocaust, Viktor Frankl, and he writes a lot on creativity, and also he talks about where plane of meaning meets another plane of meaning, and that's how a joke works. So you've got one thing here, and then it has another way of looking at it, and there's the laugh. So there's humour, and there's songs about change and the possibility of change within that. So I try and include a couple of those kinds of songs. After the sorrow and the sadness, or the silence or the stillness or whatever, we're coming out of that with something that that we've learned from the juxtaposition of the joys and sorrows, if you like.
Group singing facilitators in Australia work in the context of a deep history of Indigenous culture that's predated white settlement by tens of thousands of years. Indigenous people recognise Uluru as the heart of the country, and the waterholes across the land connect to one another and back to the heart of Uluru along songlines. This is how communities connect. Group singing facilitators don't ever seek to appropriate that culture, but we respect it, recognise the power of song, and we learn from it.
The song, which is in itself a piece of art, to place it there, it needs to be placed with care. And that's perhaps what the work is. You know, in Indigenous communities, they have many songs and things that are done. We're healing and justice, and the songs that will help carry us into the world where we do our work to charge us for the work, whatever it is, of being a parent or a teacher or a community member or a neighbour or a shopkeeper or whatever. We've got energised from the memory, which is kind of tapping into a really much larger race memory, if not, or human memory.
As you can imagine, group singing facilitators accumulate and archive precious collections of songs, and they'd probably rather you stole their car than their song list, but they're happy to share their songs. Many of the facilitators moved into a whole new energy when they spoke with me about their song collections. Their voices would drop a tone, a levelling stare, and a deeply reverent reference to my spreadsheet, my library, my repertoire, or the master file. I took this quite seriously. I have one too. The next layer of song selection after what makes the cut is what makes the cut today.
It's a bit of magic, really. Choosing the right song. I think that's also choosing songs that connect to you. So Strat once said to me, you know, people will come because they like what you bring, and you can bring whatever, and the right people will come. Yeah, I try and choose really authentically from me.
In 2023, a national referendum was conducted in Australia in which voters cast a yes or no vote regarding a change to the Constitution which would prescribe a body called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice that would have been able to make representations to federal parliament on matters relating to Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples. This was an example of the wider context within which facilitators make song selections for their community groups.
With a whole load of, I think, likely to be supporting my political viewpoint on The Voice, then I'm going to go in and do all my yes songs and get them all, you know, excited about carrying the yes message. But if I'm working with a bunch of other people, I think are more likely to be divided on that, then it wouldn't serve any function to go in and do that, because A, it wouldn't convert the non-yes people, it would put them offside, and B, it would just feel like going in with a sledgehammer. And so I would introduce it much more gently. I'd make sure that there was some Indigenous material, some appropriately sourced and used within the workshop, and I would then make reference to the referendum in whatever way seemed like the most likely way to engender a positive reaction from everybody. And that would be my way of campaigning, doing it in a way that isn't about going in with a sledgehammer, but going in a way that's likely to bring people across. So I suppose I'm always trying to bring people across to something.
Bringing people across to something aligns with the first stage of the process we talked about in the previous episode, advocating. Here, though, note the very specific application of advocating to a later part of the process, curating song. Suze Pratton wrote a song affirming the yes vote called Voice in collaboration with drug artist Stacey Ettel. The song became popular for singing groups across the country, but like many facilitators, Suze was discerning about how she placed the song.
I don't want them to be in an awkward situation where I'm just shoving my political perspective down their throat. So what I realised really quickly was it needed to be an opt-in situation. And so that's where it developed, and people who wanted to sing it opted in, and it worked really well. But see, that's a political message in a way, but it is straight from the heart. Like, you know, I wrote that song straight from my heart.
It's a choice of voice, treaty true. Voice, treaty true.
Not only are facilitators selecting songs for the master list, selecting songs for today or for the given moment, they're selecting songs for the times.
If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start soon or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changing.
So
I will retire songs. I've probably retired about half a dozen songs from the list. There are some songs that 15, 20 years ago were fine, whether it's socially, politically, culturally, we're fine. But the more we learn and the more we open our ears to the changing world, changing attitudes and views, every now and then I'll look back through and I'll look at a song and I'll pick it up. It just doesn't sit all that well with me anymore. And some songs that are quite literal about slavery, but there are still some songs that I'm reluctant now to bring out to play. No matter how good the song is, it just doesn't feel quite right.
Singing facilitators do plan sessions, but they plan for flexibility. So in the next episode, once the group is singing, we'll hear about how the song selection can pivot in an instant and is a sub-process known as song sequencing.
Then there's just the nitty-gritty of actually making a song sheet, because I give out words. A lot of people don't, but find that people need both the eye gate and the ear gate to get stuff in. So I don't do dots because I hardly read well myself, and I'm aiming for people to develop their oral tradition.
This talk of song sheet preparation and arranging starts to move us into the next part of the process, developing song.
I've been to a lot of singing workshops. And someone said, why don't you start a choir? And I thought, well, what are we going to sing? Because, I've got some songs, and that should get us through the first year. 10 years later, we were still singing those songs, but I started to acquire more. 23 years later, we're still singing some of those songs, but of course my job is to find more. So having to find songs, and then I arrange them, which I love. I really enjoy the arranging.
Once a song is selected, it's then developed for the group. These processes aren't necessarily distinct though, as I mentioned before. Because song is the language of the facilitator, if the needed song doesn't exist, they need to create it.
You move into a zone where you're in that creative, your muse is working and you're in that creative moment. Sometimes that's where a new song will develop, because you can't find something that just fits the moment, so you make one up. To make something that wasn't there before is what the creative act is about. We are putting a song in the air. We're putting sound into the air that wasn't there before.
Put a song in the air and it will go places you will never know. All around the world, all around the world, all around the wide world.
Yeah, I've written a few mostly shortish songs, and I feel like that's perhaps something that I could challenge myself to do a lot more. I've actually got willing people who are keen to, as soon as I say, I just wrote this little thing, they're like, show us, so that's nice.
In this episode, we're talking about curating song. We've heard about song selection and development, and now it comes time for framing. Framing happens in the window of time before a song is shared. Facilitators know the value of this thin slice of time where a song can be given context. This involves naming the song, the songwriter, maybe a little about where it was learned or why it was written, and a link.
So for me, it's really important where I've learned the song and who wrote it. So it's provenance, if you like. And a lot of the singer leaders feel the same. We want to know who wrote this song. And if we can't find out who wrote it, where did it come from? It's also just helping people think about a song as more than just something that's nice to sing. It's like helping them connect with it.
Song curation is a mountain of work, but it can be displayed in an instant. Listen here to Emily demonstrate song selection, framing and sharing in one move.
So we're singing a James Fagan and Nancy Kerr song about peace, and I learnt it at a CM Vic event from Jane Thompson, and it's like, start opening line, I drink wine just a little in the evening and I've been known for my barroom dancing, and then it goes on, all these reasons to sing for peace, that I don't care about your sinners and your saviours. I just want to know when you go, you'll be going in peace. So I love it. It's a bit light. It's a bit, cheeky, but it's actually serious. We need to save this planet. We need to sing for peace. We need to, prevent nuclear war. And that's the things that we've been singing that song about, and for. We're doing it at the Hiroshima Day on Sunday.
In framing the song, the facilitator wants to make the song relevant and foreshadow any perceived concern about the difficulty of learning it.
It's always with a fundamental belief that they'll get it right eventually, and that we can do this, and that we're working through a challenge, but we're going to get there. I wouldn't bring something to them I didn't think they were completely capable of, and I think they know that. And I do have to remind them sometimes that, remember, this is the first time you've heard this. It's okay. We're just going to keep plugging away at it. We'll get there.
I think the choir is like a safe boat. It's like a container for us all to be in for a short time, which is safe. And it's so optimistic. It's like a light. It's like the lights at the end of the tunnel, and that we're all going to be okay. So a lot of the songs have that in them as well, as is life can be hard and life can really hurt, but life can be joyous and heading towards the light.
Although singing for fun and wellbeing groups aren't performance-focused, groups do choose to share songs occasionally. In this example, the framing had a second iteration and was undertaken by the singers.
The Gipsapella thing is usually, it's a season that works towards the Archipella Festival. So it is, even though we try and keep it like a joyful sing for fun experience, it is working towards a very informal performance. When it comes to the performance, I say, who wants to introduce this one? Different members. So if we've got a program of 6 songs, there'll be 6 different people who go off and do the research for that particular song and do the emceeing for that. There has been some people really take it seriously. So they go and do a way better job of researching the song and the background to the song and presenting the information to the audience than I would do.
In the interviews I conducted with 30 expert singing facilitators, we often found we'd been talking for a long time before we discussed singing itself. Despite infusing this episode with songs, the fact is the process you've heard about so far hasn't involved group singing. That's why the facilitator's work is so much more than singing. But singing does begin. Songs are shared. At the start of a session, warm-up songs are ignited and they spread fast. They're quick, simple and easy to build up. We'll talk more about how a session unfolds, and again, though singing facilitation is a process, it moves back and forward through phases. Let's focus here on the moments where a facilitator shares a song with a group that they will then go on to sing together.
There's a moment when you move into ceremony. It's nice to be talking to you about this because we don't articulate this very often. You know, people will say this person has a charisma or this person's got it, whatever it might be. We come because we pick up something that's beyond what is at face value. And so I think that's probably what it is and it's not being up yourself. It actually requires humility. It actually requires you to recognize your earthiness and your ordinariness. So yes, and that's the sensitivity you bring to the group. So preparation of the group for the arrival of the song or launching the song into the group is another whole set of skills, isn't it?
She's been leading singing groups for more than 50 years, and she said, whenever I'm picking a song, I'm always looking at the community and going, what does it need? Like, have we just been through a drought? Am I working with farmers? What's happening in the community? What song needs to be dropped in? And where is the hunger of the heart? That's where the lyric came from. Where is the hunger? Where is the hunger? Where is the hunger? Where is the hunger? Where is the hunger of the heart?
This is the sweet spot of the work, getting to call up these songs, to work with them. It's like you'd work with paints or other sort of art material. They're tangible and they have their own form. Yeah, I love them deeply for a start. So to know where they come from just enriches that and deepens that experience for everybody. So to give some context to the song. Sometimes say to the leaders who haven't quite got this, feel like you can just put the cloak on, like the song was a cloak, and put it on and wear it.
As singing facilitators, we now sing the song, a part of it, enough to show how it goes, and then, with an invitation or nod, the group will sing it back, and singing together has begun.
Your cozy home, everyone gathers round you, you light up songs, everyone is stronger for you, your arms are wide, you hold me close, let the love inside you are true, you radiate, I want to radiate with you, so
In In this episode, you've heard about the curating part of the group singing facilitation process. It involves selecting, developing, framing, and sharing songs. In the next episode, we look at the third of 4 parts of facilitating singing. It's all about welcoming and sustaining expression through group singing, and how beautiful that is. For a list of song credits and contributing participants, please read the credit notes.
One more time.